Welcome to Resilience Agenda Radio, the mental fitness podcast. My name is Hadley Fisher. Here at Resilience Agenda, we're bringing you the latest on how to develop, maintain, and improve your mental fitness. Today we're talking with Mark Van Buren. Mark Van Buren, he's a mental fitness trainer, yoga studio owner, and mindfulness instructor. He's the author of several books, including Your Life is Meditation and A Fool's Guide to Actual Happiness, both of which we'll talk about today. He joins us from New Jersey in the US. Mark, how are you going?
I'm going very well. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for coming on. First of all, I love that you describe yourself as a mental fitness trainer. At Resilience Agenda, we've been using this term for about 6 years. We are trying to build this term around the world and make it into something that everyone can relate to. When did you first hear it? Why do you use it? And what does it mean to you?
You know, there's so much, stuff around meditation and mindfulness, and so many people, it's like, oh, I've heard of meditation. I've tried it. It doesn't work. Or, oh, yeah, mindfulness. I've heard all about it. And I wanted to just change it up and make it, so that someone would say, oh, what's that about? Because when you hear meditation, like I said, there's so many ideas that people have already about it. And so many misconceptions. So it's just like they'll immediately shut it down. Oh, I'm not going to go to that meditation workshop or that meditation class, or why would I work with a meditation instructor? I already know about it. It doesn't work for me. That's what I hear all the time with meditation. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point, because that's funny. But so I just wanted to I don't know, make it sexier. I don't know, just to make it cooler, make it more just to grab people's attention and make them ask a question. Oh, what is that about? And what is that? What do you incorporate with that? And it just really to have people wonder. And I didn't even know that you guys have been using it. I thought I was like the first one, and I was like, I guess not.
Well, I was just reading a news article before. Of all people, Selena Gomez has started using the term mental fitness. And someone sent me an article saying, look, Selena Gomez's new startup, I think it's a mindfulness app or something, has just gotten $100 million valuation. And they were basically trying to, remind me and say, Hadley, when you make it, just remember me, when you get your $100 million valuation. But since you've been using the term, can you share any stories with us about how people have responded to it and how it's worked and how it's allowed people to think of meditation or mindfulness in a different way? What we do is we come at it from a slightly different angle. Mental health and mental illness, obviously very stigmatized terms, very personal to me and my family. And when I wanted to do all the things I could do to try and prevent ending up in that way, I love the science of positive psychology and the science of well-being. But as a tough guy, I found it a bit hard to take. And I think we talked about that before. The crystals and the beads and the woo-woo has kind of taken over a lot of this stuff, and it can be a really mainstream and valuable idea. Tell us about some success stories you've had with the term mental fitness.
Well, I actually started the program at a gym, so obviously you could see why people would be more attracted to that. And if you think about it, we're a culture that's so obsessed with our body, and we think of fitness as just the body. So when you just throw that word mental, then it seems like, oh, maybe there are things that I can do that can help me cultivate more resilience or cultivate qualities of mind that can help me really with any aspect of my life, especially the difficult stuff. And as you talked about with the stigma, nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the suffering. And that's the one thing that's true. I mean, the first noble truth of Buddhism, one translation is life is suffering. It's not the best translation, but, it's basically saying that life has these inevitable sufferings, mental, physical, aging, illness, death, loss, all this stuff is real, and nobody talks about it. And I find that my job as a mental fitness trainer, it seems to be sometimes it's just as simple as normalizing suffering.
Yeah.
and saying, here, this is a normal natural part of this existence, and there are tools and practices, and I guess you could call them exercises, that can strengthen your mind, that can strengthen your ability to be aware and awake in daily life, that can strengthen your ability to expand your window of tolerance for the unpleasant, sobering truths of life, and cultivate kindness and unconditional friendliness and compassion and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Your newest book, A Fool's Guide to Actual Happiness. Tell us what people get wrong about pursuing happiness and what, to you, actual happiness is.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. I actually did a talk on this a week or two ago. I think one of the biggest things that gets in the way of our happiness is this entitlement that we have. And author Ezra Beta, I'm not sure if you know who he is, he's a Buddhist author and teacher. He talks about this entitlement we have, that life's supposed to feel good, that life's supposed to go according to our plan. And we think of happiness as pursuing pleasure, or we even might think happiness is pleasure. A lot of people that I work with privately, they think happiness is a particular feeling. I'm not happy. Why? Because I don't feel this certain way. So we associate happiness with a certain feeling. We um, associate happiness with fulfilling desires. We associate happiness with having conditions be just right. Now, the problem is that it's not in line with what's true. And what's true, very simple: impermanence. It's one truth that we can all look at life and say, yes, of course, but we don't live that way. It's like our mind has evolved to make us think that we can have some permanent happiness, some permanent condition, some permanent pleasure. And that's how we go around living our lives, trying to chase after this. And once you really start to see impermanence, you start to get a different understanding of happiness. It's not, can I get everything that I want? No, because once you get it, the satisfaction from it ends. And even if you have conditions exactly the way you want them, those conditions will change and end. If you get a feeling that you love and you try to hold on to it, that's going to end. That's just the nature of things. It's nothing, nothing personal, right? You're not being punished. You're not doing something wrong. It's just, if something arises, it ceases. That's just the natural law. And when you don't understand that, you're running around neurotically trying to hold on to something you can't hold on to, or avoid something that you inevitably can't avoid. So for me, actual happiness is when you stop all the running. And what meditation really offers is you the ability to learn to stay, to learn to be right there, to learn to open up to life no matter what. And I created this acronym called ARC, and I find it to be extremely helpful for people to understand why they're meditating and what they're actually cultivating while they meditate. And it stands for awareness, relaxation, and kindness. And these are the three qualities that we're trying to cultivate and practice while we sit on the cushion and while we live our lives. So it's like, how do I practice meditation on a Tuesday afternoon when I'm stressed out? Well, are you aware? Are you intentionally paying attention without judgment, with a sense of warmth, with some curiosity, with the willingness to be there? Are you learning to soften into it, even if it's unpleasant? You're having a really bad day. Bad days feel like this. It's like that simple. Oh, you have anxiety. Anxiety feels like this. Sometimes it feels this way. It's going to pass. It might come back, but these are the ingredients of life. And then can I hold that in a space of unconditional friendliness? And I think that starts to get to the actual happiness, which is, an equanimous mind, contentment, ease, no matter what. Like you can be grieving and still have joy and ease. You can have an addiction and still have ease. Addictive cravings arising doesn't mean you need to act on them, and you can still soften with them, and you can still open to life. I think it's just learning to open completely to life. And there's a quote, and I always forget who it's by, but he says, nothing human is alien to me. And I think that's going in the direction of actual happiness, is that we're willing to open and look and feel everything, whether it's pleasant or not. And I think once you have that ability to say, okay, anger feels like this, happiness feels like that, calm feels like this, uh, you know, jealousy, craving, whatever feels like that. Uh, you start resting in what Ajahn Chah, a meditation master, calls the one who knows, and that part of you that's unchanging. So you're seeing all of these changing conditions, moods, thoughts, cravings, aversions, fears, but all along there's been this unchanging awareness that can hold it all, that can watch it all come and go, and then you start living from that place. And that's where I think actual happiness is found, in just the ability to let go and be aware of things as they are, to learn to rest with things as they are, to have a mind big enough to hold things as they are.
Yeah, someone described it to me once as being okay with reality as it is. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Just means you have to be
Right.
kind of okay with it. And it reminds me of this story. I'm going to mess this up, but about a young girl who was drawing a picture, and she kept scribbling it up and scribbling and crunching up a bit of paper and throwing it away. And her dad came in and noticed his daughter was getting upset. And he said, "What's wrong, love?" And she said, "Well, my picture's not working out. It's not right." And in the end, he gave her a good bit of fatherly advice and said, "Well, look, the reason why it's not working out is because you've chosen only one way for it to work out well, but there are 99 ways for it to go wrong." And this is what happens in life. I mean, if we expect things to go our way, if we expect things to go according to plan, if we expect all our goals to be fulfilled rather easily, that's a pretty flimsy basis on which to base our happiness or our well-being even. And you talk about the Buddhist approach to life, that has inspired me, but I'm probably more, I personally lean towards the Stoic approach, which is whatever's happening to me, how will I deal with this well? That's success. I can be happy dealing with this awful situation well, and I reckon that's a skill. Your other book, Your Life is Meditation. A lot of people are interested in health and well-being. Like you said, they've heard that meditation's good for us, but many of us still either don't do it, find it hard to stay consistent doing it during a busy life. Many of us have given up because of all the weirdness and because our boss told us to do it or HR told us to do it. Um, and I've heard there's that quote about if there was a pill, that could pill for happiness, it'd look somewhat like meditation. Why don't people do it more? And when you say your life is meditation as a way of, introing to it a bit more gently, what do you mean by that?
So, to go for your first question, why don't people do it? I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think on one level, people don't do it, one, because they don't understand it. And here in the West, or at least in America, our society is all about me, me, me. And in Buddhism, that's the biggest cause of suffering, is focusing just on self-centered, thinking. And so we take this amazing practice, and then we make it about, how can I feel better? How can I make, make me happier? How can I be more healthy? And look, there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using the practice in this way, but I think the practice goes much deeper. And a common misunderstanding is that my mind needs to stop.
Mm.
And so I have these people that come to me, "Oh, I tried that one time and my mind didn't stop. It's not for me." And I laugh, because one, you tried it once, and you just expect your mind to shut off, which is funny. Like, if you want to learn Beethoven on piano and you never played piano, and you sit down and you try, well, piano's not for me, I can't play it. It's like silly. This is a lifelong practice. And like you said, people want the pill. People want the quick fix. This is a rest of your life way of being in the world, which we'll get to. Your life is meditation. But and the other thing is that your mind's not made to be quiet.
Mm.
You're
That's what
I
minds do.
consider.
That's what minds do. They talk at you, they chatter at you, they look for the problems ahead of the road, and that's usually a pretty good thing. But just sometimes we need to pull it back a bit.
Right. And it's really not about stopping our mind. It's just changing your relationship to it, not taking it so personally. It's like an organ, your heart. You're not mad that your heart's beating. You're not mad your stomach's digesting. You shouldn't be mad that your mind's thinking, because that's what it was created to do. The problem is we take it personally. We identify as it. We say, oh, I'm such a worrier. What's wrong with me? No, your mind has been conditioned to worry in this way. It's nothing personal. You're not choosing to do it. It's not like you wake up and say, "Ooh, I can't wait to obsess about something I can't change all day." No, you wake up and there it is. So it's not who you are. You don't need to feel guilty about it, but you are responsible for what you do with it. And I think that's where the freedom lies, is in our relationship to it. And that's what people need to understand. If they understand that we're learning to change our relationship to our lives, to ourselves, to our suffering, to our thoughts, to our emotions. We're not trying to fix it. Life is not something that you fix. Suffering is not a problem to be fixed. This is just how things are. Like you said, reality is like this. And you can sit there and bang your head against the wall, hoping that it's some other way. But at the end of the day, it's still like this. You could be with that without banging your head against the wall, you know? And your life has a lot more ease, and you have a lot more room to make better decisions for better conditions in your life. Um, so if people just understood it, and that's why I like ARC. When I say you're cultivating awareness, I'm not saying you're cultivating feeling good. I'm not saying you're cultivating getting rid of all your problems. I'm saying you're cultivating the ability to be with your life as it is, not not as you think it should be or as you're expecting it to
Yeah.
be. This is how things are right now, and that's what's true. And it's like a man going outside every day and looking up at the sky and getting mad that it's not red. But this and it's silly because the sky's blue. I mean, that's just the way it is. And if you go outside every day and you're just mad and mad, why isn't it red? I hate blue, blah blah. Like you'd be a crazy person. But this is what we do all the time. I shouldn't be this way. My body shouldn't look like this. My mind shouldn't think like this. My kids shouldn't act like this. My job shouldn't be this way. I want it like this, want it like that. And we cause ourselves all these problems when we could just say, this is how it is. These are the ingredients of my life. How can I skillfully and wholesomely, in a wise and compassionate way, respond to what's happening? And it's much simpler too. We get so caught up in how it was, how we want it to be, and judging how it is, that we could just live like, okay, it's like
Mm.
this. Right now, things are like
And
this.
because we have some control over elements of our life, we mistakenly believe that we have control over all elements of it. And I suppose if I was to pick apart your, sky is red example, because we've never seen a red sky, well, that might be a little bit easier to accept. But because sometimes we do set a goal and it comes to pass, we expect this to happen all the time. And like you said
Hmm.
before, these things, these parts of real life, suffering, grief, loss, disappointment, um, we don't talk about them. And when we experience them, we think we're the only person going through it because everyone else is happy, aren't they? They're on social media, they're in, Mexico or Bali having a great time. And, you know, one of the best things about what I do in this job is you realize that everyone's thinking the same thing. It's just that some of us are better at hiding it, some of us are better at showing it, some of us are better at talking about it. And that comes back to that fitness idea we were talking about before. Why do you need to be fit? To deal with what life throws at you. Yeah. If you want to run a marathon, it helps to be equipped to, have strong legs or be able to run a long way. If you want to lift heavy things, you better have, experience lifting heavy things. Well, what kind of things happen to you in life? Well, you experience loss, failure, grief, disappointment, envy, all these different things. What skill do you have for each of those circumstances? Um, and while there is more to mental fitness than just mindfulness or meditation, that's a let's call it a meta skill that can help a lot of things. Just on that point, and before we come back to the question about the book, what is the difference between mindfulness and meditation? What are their similarities, and how are they different?
I mean, I guess it's just a matter of how you define them, right? I could say that they're both the same, or we could say that meditation is the cultivation of mindfulness, and then mindfulness is what you bring into your life. But mindfulness is also what you're doing while you're in meditation, you know? So I would say that mindfulness is those, or are those five qualities that I said. It's intentional paying attention without judgment or expectation or storylines, with a sense of warmth, an embodied sense. It's not a dissociated, cold viewing. It's really a felt, embodied sense with the curiosity that's really important. It's investigative. And I think we forget this part, and like the McMindfulness movement is like, let's just pay attention so we can be more successful at our jobs. And all the Buddhist people roll their eyes at that. I mean, hey, look, at least they're practicing. I think it's a good step in the right direction. And sometimes you need that just to get people in the door, and then maybe it opens up some deeper places for people. But the curiosity is important, investigating this sense of self, this mind we have, and how it functions, and what makes it tick, and what we do once it is ticked off, or set off, and how we are living, and how we're relating to things. So that's a really important aspect of it. And then just the willingness to be right here. And if you think of like people suffering in their lives, what are the two things or the two thoughts that people have in a moment of suffering? Something's wrong or something's missing. And these are the two categories that people get caught in. If you're mad at somebody at work, you think something's wrong. That person shouldn't be acting that way. You have an expectation, you bring that expectation, life doesn't meet that expectation, and they're suffering. Or maybe you feel like most people, like, I just want to feel happy there, and they have this fantasy about what that would feel like, and how they would feel, and how that would make things all better. And that actually blocks people from having true joy. Like, if you have chronic pain or an illness, or you struggle with anxiety, why can't you still be at ease? We you have, because you have an idea that says, if I feel bad, I can't have a good life. If I feel bad, I can't be happy. And that's just something that you believe. There are ways to practice doing that. um, I think I might have got a little off topic there.
No, that's all right. Um,
Why you bring me
no,
back?
we're going to get to the your life is meditation, get off the cushion kind of
Yes.
thing in a moment. But I was going to ask you what mindfulness was earlier, but then I thought it might be also interesting to describe for people its opposite, what I call mindlessness, what you call small mindedness. What does that look like? And can you make it sort of sound a bit ridiculous for us so we can sort of see it? You know, you see it when people are, my big example is someone's paid, $30 to eat a fancy meal, and they're sitting there watching a YouTube video as they're doing it. It's very hard to pay attention to both. That's my, mindless thing. Tell us about mindlessness or small mindedness, and describe what that might look like.
Look, just watch the news for 5 minutes. That's mindlessness. People just being thrown around by circumstances, by conditioned responses in the mind. And just a silly, simple example that we can all relate to is just you driving somewhere, and all of a sudden you show up, and you're like, "Whoa, how did I get here?" You were so caught up in thinking about this or that argument you had yesterday, or hoping for this to happen, or planning your day. You didn't even realize you were driving. Something was driving, but you weren't there for that something. And it's really sad that this is how most people live their lives. Maybe they touch into reality, I don't know, 1%, 10%. That's a little too much. But how many people actually, when they're walking, feel their feet on the ground, feel the breeze on their face, hear the cars and the birds, and are actually there for their lives, or with their kids? Just, you know, how many parents are just on their phones, and their kids are growing up, and they don't see that smile, and they don't see that call for a hug, or something like that. We're missing our lives. And meditation and mindfulness and mental fitness gives you your life back, gives you your real life back. And it's, mindlessness is almost like, when you're asleep and you're having this dream and there's all these people and there's all these things happening, and then all of a sudden your alarm goes off and there you are in bed, and it's the same thing, mindlessness, except it's you're awake. You're walking down the street and you're thinking about that vacation coming up, and you're, oh yeah, and you're picturing yourself, with a martini in your hand on the beach, and you're gonna jump in the water, and then you almost crash into somebody, and life comes back. You wake up, and that's what mindfulness is that waking up from the dream of thinking, shifting from a thought-based life to a reality-based life.
Yeah. And I think that's a
you
really
know
important point, that there are other ways to experience life other than just through our thoughts and through the narrative in our heads. And that leads me to my next question, which is, why is being present in the present moment? So you've got the past, where we often are sad about things that have happened, the future, where we're anxious about things that haven't happened yet, but we worry to protect ourselves and to prepare. But why is being present so good? Because I imagine this is one place, if you can allow me to challenge it this way, is people get sick of mindfulness. Some people might have tried meditation or mindfulness and found themselves saying, well, the present moment sucks. Um, I can't stand to be with my thoughts. I enjoy planning, dreaming, thinking about the future. My worries are actually helping me prepare and protect. Um, what's wrong with that? Why should I do any different?
Right. There's these three words that I say that don't seem very profound, but as you practice more and as you really contemplate, it becomes more and more profound. And that is, this is it. This is it. This is the only thing you have. There is nothing else. 10 years ago is gone. This morning is gone. This afternoon, not here yet. Who knows what's going to happen? You might not even make it to this afternoon, So the past and the future, they don't really exist. They're not real. They're not real at all. The past was a now moment at some point that passed, and the future, if you're lucky, will be a now moment. And this is all you have. And you know what? People cling to their suffering because that's all they know, and they'd rather stay stuck in their cocoon and feel safe. Even though there's no such thing as safety in this world, there's no such thing as security. Everything's always uncertain. People think, oh, COVID showed us COVID made things uncertain. No, it's always been uncertain. Something like COVID could always happen.
COVID showed us how impermanent things can be.
Right. But I mean, a meteor or an asteroid could hit the planet today. A solar flare could ruin everything. And how a certain way of living, like you said, is not permanent. So and then once that changes, life doesn't hesitate. When things change, they change, and that's it. One day you have time until you don't.
Back to the question that we never answered. What do you mean by your life is meditation?
Well, a lot of people again think that meditation is like, let me just escape my life for 10 minutes a day. Let me just sit down and forget my worries and de-stress. And again, there's nothing wrong with de-stressing. There's nothing wrong with, sitting to try to feel good. But how does that help you? One of my favorite teachers in college, I went to school for religion, and one of my favorite teachers, Dr. Kogan, he would always say, what does this teaching have to do with Tuesday afternoon? And I love that because that's like my whole way of teaching is based on that one thing that he said to me in college. If you read the story of Jesus, or if you read, about the Buddha, or if you're learning about mindfulness, or if you're trying to practice meditation, what does that have to do with Tuesday afternoon when you're caught in your anxiety or getting, pulled into a habitual pattern, or dealing with loss, or in a hospice situation, or you get a diagnosis? How does that help? And that's why for me, people limit meditation to just sitting and staring at a wall. You're not just trying to get better at breathing. You're cultivating particular qualities that you can live your life from, that you can bring into your daily life, so that you can live a more wholesome and skillful and compassionate way. And again, it's not just about me. And this is another part that's important, I think, that again, in the American society, or the Western society, whatever you want to call it, maybe the whole world at this point, it's all about the individual. It's all about me. I want to meditate so I'm better, so I feel good, so that I'm less caught. But we have to remember that I'm doing this so that I can help other people, so that I can be the most useful uh, I can be in this world, so that I don't contribute to the violence, so that I don't contribute to the hatred, so that I don't contribute to the division that's going on in the world. So I'm practicing so that I can be of better use, better service. That's so important.
There's another component to happiness that I did not pick up until I was at least 25, that it was not all about me. And, I think, I don't know, my name Tony Robbins or someone else said, your life's about contribution. You know, what's that saying? A life is, what you get, a living or whatever it is what you give. And it just changed everything.
And if you want to be really joyful and happy, then give that to everybody you meet. And that's like the secret. If you It's an unlimited amount of joy serving other people. And you got to be careful there too, because there are people that do that so that they don't have to face themselves. So I mean, any of these tools, you have to be very careful, because the mind is tricky, and the ego is tricky, the small mindedness. I call it me world, actually. That's my new saying for it, me world. But it's very tricky, and it'll use things to fulfill its own agendas, and it might look really nice, but it still might be feeding something else, and
Yeah,
it takes a lot of mindfulness. But to finally answer your question, uh,
yeah,
meditation is about relating to this moment, and it's always this moment, and it's how are you responding to the moment, and that's it. That's your whole practice. So if sitting is important. I think you have to have a daily practice for many reasons. Again, thinking of a piano player, a good piano player is one that's playing the same scales every day and doing the finger exercises, and they do that very strict discipline training so that when they get on stage, they can express the music freely, spontaneously. But without that discipline, they can't do that. So it's the same thing with meditation. You're doing this very strict discipline sitting, whether you're counting your breath, repeating a mantra, whatever practice you're doing, so that you can express that, the heart of meditation, in your daily life. And that comes out in many forms. It's how you act, how you speak, the whole eightfold path of Buddhism, which I won't get into. But that's how do I live a life that's uh, that's from a place of wisdom, a place of compassion, and within like a box, or not a box, but within an ethical framework, uh, that's serving others.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yes, you can sit down on a cushion and be mindful and meditate, and that might be ideal. But a lot of people, especially busy people, may need a gentler introduction to mindful living. There are activities that we can do throughout our day that we're probably already doing, such as eating or boiling the kettle or walking, as you said. Um, it may be unrealistic for people to be mindful all day, but these daily prompts to do this thing mindfully, the one that I've made a big practice and a big mission in my life to change was doing the dishes. Doing the dishes has gone from a chore that I hate to a chance to slow down, feel water on my hands, get burnt by my scalding hot tap occasionally, and just be here now. And I love it. And that is, the art of reframing a situation. Talk us through your favorite daily prompts for daily mindfulness.
Right. Well, it's so funny you bring up the dishes, because in Your Life is Meditation, there's literally a chapter on doing the dishes. So that's so funny that we all use that. To be honest, again, it comes back to arc, right? So how can I, eh, with whatever I'm doing, with whatever I'm experiencing, can I be aware in that way that I mentioned before? Can I relax into what's here? That doesn't mean make it better, but that just means softening. Can I not add any more tension? And then can I hold it in kindness? And for me, one of my favorite practices is anytime that I'm like walking from my car, whether it's like my car to my job to my car, my my car to the grocery store, like those little short moments of walking, I just drop everything and walk. I'm not thinking about what I need to get, where I need to go. And again, that's a skill in itself, being able to let go of your mind. It doesn't mean stopping it, but being able to let go of the obsession with it and come into the senses. That embodied mindfulness I was talking about, it's just coming back to the five senses. So when I'm walking from my car to my job, I just experience whatever's there, and I'm not looking for like only birds and clouds. It's a there might be garbage on the ground, I might hear cars honking, but I'm aware. Then I just soften, I intentionally consciously relax my body as I'm walking and just make sure I'm not holding any unnecessary tension anywhere, and I just walk. And it's really nice to like, and this is what I don't understand, how people don't live, or rather how people live without this, is how do people live without being able to put the burden down? Like, if even when I'm in the most triggered state, I know that I can just put it down.
It'll be there
Right, it's
later
like
to pick
carrying a
back up.
heavy rock.
It'll be there when you need it.
Right. And well, you know what, it's there, and like, so, and it's very different when I'm holding it versus
Mm,
when it's right there next to me. So it's still a heavy rock, and that's what I try to teach people. Putting down the heavy rock, like let's say the heavy rock is your anxiety, it doesn't mean the anxiety goes anywhere, it doesn't mean it goes away, it doesn't necessarily mean it feels better, but it's when you don't hold it, when you don't identify it, it simply becomes what it is. And you learn to be with that. Okay, it's a tightness in the chest for 2 hours every day, or it's a heaviness on my shoulders for most of my day, and you learn to be with that. So for me, it's just to be able to just, even if I'm having the worst day ever, I can just drop everything and walk. And there's that coolness, and actually in Buddhism, the word that most people would probably know, nirvana, which in Pali is nibbana, it literally means like a cooling down of something that was hot. So like back in the day, someone would be cooking rice and it would be really hot, and they'd let it sit for a while, and then they'd say, the rice is nibbana, like now you can eat it because it has cooled down. So when you have these everyday nirvanic moments of just putting it down and cooling the cooling the fires of greed, hatred, ignorance, aversion, just and it's just by going back into awareness. Again, even if your mind is full of all these things, full of worries, full of angst, whatever, just by sitting back and just
yeah,
seeing,
yeah,
anxiety feels like this.
yeah,
A busy mind looks like that. An achy shoulder feels like this.
yeah.
There's like an
You
immediate
observe, you
relief, and
observe it. You observe it, and it's
it's
a
so
bit
hard.
separate to you now. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And it's separate, but it's at the same time, it's not dissociated. I think what the difference is
yeah,
that you're not identifying as it. So it's still felt. It's not like it's out there somewhere, um, but you're still feeling it fully. But it's no longer the burden of me, my anxiety, and then the extra aversion. It shouldn't be this way. I don't like this. Something's wrong with me. Everyone else on Facebook is happy, and I'm just here anxious. Like it's just, it's just that coolness, that relief.
and so that coolness, I suppose, you can get by having a scheduled daily practice. And so, you talked about agendas before. We sell mental fitness agendas. We make these wonderful tools where you put in your mental fitness activities, whether that's mindfulness or a connection with a friend or whatever it might, or your walk. You literally put it in your calendar, and you can scheduleize that, and you can say every day, I'm going to, on the front foot, do this thing that cools me down, to use your term. But then you can also use mindfulness kind of reactively, when you notice, and that's the skill, to notice or being aware of when you're feeling a bit hot, you're a bit angry, you're a bit pissed off about something, whatever it is. You can then go into that same state, and you get better at that state by doing your regular practice, and that's it's this cycle, and it just makes you want to do it more. And the more it works. I know mindfulness doesn't have to work in the classic Buddhist sense, but for a lot of people, that's a good motivator. Once you notice it cooling you down, you're like, hang on, how do I get more of this?
You got to be careful with that because people get caught on calm. People get, and this is I don't want to call it spiritual materialism because I don't think that would fall under that category, but it's definitely something to be cautious about because calm is also impermanent.
Yeah.
You know, ease, joy, all these things that we talk about, they're impermanent. If you get stuck on calm, if you get stuck on a particular way, then you're just causing more trouble. And I think the funny thing about this is that mindfulness is always there happening,
Mm.
and it's almost like to say, oh, am I being mindful, is almost silly, but at the same time it's not, because we're so conditioned to run away from that. It's already there. It's not like we need to you know make it like, you just open your eyes, you see, your ears are hearing right now. You're not, awareness is shining on everything. And but again, it's just when you talk about these things, there's so many paradoxes, and it's really hard to put into words. But yeah, once people start getting a taste of, wow, like I remember the first time for me, people, when people would cut me off, I'd get all mad, flip my finger, honk. And I remember when I first started practicing, I just slowed down, and I was like, oh, I could just slow down. And it's like the gym. Like, you're doing all this hard work when you first start. You're sore as hell. You have the same body. It seems like nothing's changing. You're like, why am I doing this? And then all of a sudden, someone says, "Wow, you look like you've been working out." And it's like, well, I have actually. But, and then that motivates you even more.
Yeah.
So for a long time in practice, and well, I don't want to say a long time because you might notice right away. But I think that there's just these slow openings, or like your habits melt away slowly, almost like imagine like a glacier melting. Like, it take a long time, but things, and then things change, and you might be doing this practice, nothing's changing, I'm still crazy, I still have all these problems, but then there's an experience, like I just said, where maybe you always yell at your mother, and then one day you're really thinking about mindfulness, you're practicing, your mom comes in, and then you don't react in the same
Mm.
way. And then it's like, then your mom's like, wow, and then it's like, wow, this is working.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to say work, it's working, because then people have an idea of what working is and what not working is, and then they give up because it's like, well, it's not working anymore.
You do need a reason to come back tomorrow, don't you? I mean, and like, I mean, I guess that maturity comes over time. You've got three kids. What do you teach them about mindful living? And do they think dad's a weirdo, or do they embrace it?
Yeah, I I'll do like 1 or 2 minute sittings with them sometimes. I used to do more scheduled stuff with them. My oldest son will sit for, he could probably sit for like 4 or 5 minutes. Uh, so, I do that, but just exposing them to it. Like, I used to sit in the living room for my daily sitting, right where everybody was, so that they could see it. But they know that's what I do. I mean, they know my tattoos all, have Buddhas and meditation all over it. So I think it's just more about exposing them to it and not forcing it. Because if I force them to do it, and then they're going to not want to do it. But if they see that dad's doing it, they want to try to be like dad, and then they'll go do it. So you have to kind of, and I think it's just how you live your life. Just trying to live as awakened, I don't know, as possible.
Yep. Do you try and impart any particular messages to them about mindfulness? When they're upset, do you say, breathe, or do you say, calm, or do you use it functionally in that way, or is it too early for that? Or
Sometimes that might work. A lot of times, once, it's just like us. Once you're really caught, if somebody comes along and says, take 3 breaths, you're not going to be like, okay. You're going to be like, screw you. Like, once you're caught. So once that they're really triggered, um, Sometimes, I mean, you know what? Just instead of yelling back at them, I could just hold them and let that like warm, loving presence melt it away. And that's kind of what we do in meditation or in mindfulness. You can think of your problems as this inner 3-year-old or 5-year-old that's having a fit, and can you provide that loving, compassionate space for them and hold them until they calm down? And then once they calm down, then you can have that conversation. This is not the appropriate way. If you wanted something, just teaching them skillful ways to manage their emotions. And again, it's hard because I have 3, 5, and 7, so they're still learning what emotions are, and I'm going to be 37 and I'm still trying to figure it out, so I'm not expecting them to get it. But yeah, just little tidbits here and there. Sometimes I'll tell, you know my son was having some stomach problems, so I would tell him to bring his hands to his stomach, close his eyes, and breathe in through his nose and then blow out through his mouth like he's blowing out of a straw. And that's helpful. And then there was a time I was working with special needs kids, mainly autism, and I would teach them walking meditation. So that actually went really well. And even with little kids, you could just say, you're at a sleepover and everybody's sleeping, and you're trying to quietly walk to the bathroom or something. So you teach them to walk and to feel their footsteps and to make sure they're not being loud. And so there's a lot of fun ways, and that's not my specialty. There are people that really specialize in that, but there's just fun ways. And just sometimes we'll just be outside, and I'll have them pause and say, "Oh, let's just look at the clouds," just something like that. Bring them back and to the wonder of life, to the spaciousness of things, to the beauty.
Yep.
And I remember as when my son was a little younger, to help him just open up like that, I'd say, like, do you hear what the trees are whispering to you? The trees are whispering something, and it's hard to understand. You have to really listen. So it's almost like a Zen koan. What's the trees say?
Hey, how did you come to be so interested in mindfulness? You mentioned you studied religion at college. Um, did you stumble upon it? Did you need it? Um, where did it come from in your life?
I wish I had a cool story for that, but I really don't. I learned first in high school. I think junior year in gym class, our teacher tried to teach us, and I was the guy like making fart sounds and poking my friends, throwing a pen at somebody. I tried, and then I felt like I couldn't do it, right? Just like all these other people that come to me. And so I just did what I normally did growing up, which was be the jokester. Um, but that seed was planted, and years later, maybe early college, I wanted to start doing it again. I had this real deep yearning for like God or something deeper, some kind of deeper spiritual experience. And um, I don't know. I mean, it's not like I was depressed or anything, but I guess the way I was living wasn't fulfilling. Um, I was a thrill seeker. I'll put it to put it simply. So maybe something deeper was recognizing that wasn't really doing it. But I really wanted to have some like deep spiritual experience, and I became obsessed with you know getting that through meditation. And I talk about that a little bit in Your Life is Meditation. I was searching for an experience that was going to save me from my life. And you might get experience as meditation, but you know that's not the point. That's not the point of it. It's and it took me a long time to realize that. But at the same time, that yearning got me to go on so many retreats, got me to spend hours and hours a day meditating and doing qigong and doing all these different things, that's what got me to go to school for religion. I was looking for an answer. I was looking for a reason. I was looking for an experience, and of course, I didn't find anything, but it, it left me with more questions,
Mhm.
which has left me more open. And I feel like the whole point of the practice is to kind of be okay with the mystery, to be able to rest and wonder, and to get really good at not knowing.
Yeah.
To have that don't know beginner's mind all the time, and just to be open for this experience of this life. So you know that drive drove me to a Chan, which is Chinese version of Zen, Chan Buddhist Center, and that's when I started doing retreats. I did 3 days, and 5 days, and 7 days, and 10 days. Then I lived with the monks and nuns for a 30-day work study, and I was just obsessed with the practice. Again, maybe not in the wholesome direction. I was really trying to find something, get something, but that drive was there, and that drive drove me to do really amazing things within the practice. It also drove me to work with cancer children, to help people, grief groups, adults with cancer and illnesses. Like it's so weird how all this happens. You're doing this practice, and all of a sudden you want to like go towards the suffering. It's not, and your whole life has been trying to avoid it. But then when you start practicing, you realize that there's so much to get, and I hate to say it like that, by opening to suffering, by turning towards it, by going towards it, by easing other people's suffering. And I don't know how it works, but it just put me in all these different places that I would have never went to.
What's next for Mark Van Buren? I mean, you've written a couple of books. I'm sure you're thinking about your next one. What else can be said about mindfulness and meditation that John Kabat-Zinn hasn't already said?
Well, you know what? I think all of these spiritual teachers now, they're getting older, 70s, 80s. They're a different generation. And I'm a different generation, and there, I I relate to people differently. I'd like to think that I'm more authentic about things. I consider myself kind of like a no BS kind of teacher. I'm not going to tell you something you want to hear because you want to hear it. I'm going to tell you something because it's true, and it's probably going to make you really uncomfortable. And I always joke around how I'm not going to ever fill stadiums, because I'm not going to tell people that they can meditate and be happy all the time. I'm not going to tell people they can meditate and all their problems are going to go away. I'm not going to give false hopes or promises like that, because I can't offer that. But I can offer realistic tools and practices, and relate them in a way that is down to earth and practical, that the gas attendant can listen to, a child can listen to, an elderly person can listen to, a super conservative religious person can listen to, and get something out of it. And my hope for me is that I get more opportunities. Because right now I work a day job. I actually work for a potato chip company. That's a chapter in my book too. Um, and for 50 hours a week, I'm putting potato chips on a shelf. Is it providing my family with benefits and pay? Absolutely. So I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. I'm able to have a house. I'm able to support a family. It's wonderful. But I also, part of me feels that 10 hours of my day is being wasted
Mm.
where I could be helping other people. So I'm trying to find the right conditions that can offer me pay, benefits, some kind of, dare I say, security, right? In a world that's unsecure, but or insecure, but doing what I love. So I'm just looking for more opportunities to connect with people such as yourself, and to meet with people, to work one on one with people who are suffering, because there's a lot of people out there that are suffering that don't have to suffer as much, that are making things worse and they don't realize it. And just some simple practices can make people feel so much better, and help them tremendously. So yeah, that's, I have a third book that I'm almost done with. My current publisher isn't publishing it, so I'm kind of shopping around right now. We'll see what happens with that.
Any clues on what it's about or what you're going to say?
Sure, yeah. I'm not giving away the title just in case someone tries to steal it. Not you, but anyone listening. But it's about the Four Noble Truths. It's a very secularized. It's very similar to Stephen Batchelor. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His ELSA acronym. I don't mention that, but it's very much using the Four Noble Truths as a way of practicing with everyday life, rather than these, you know, metaphysical truths that you need to believe in, because that's not the point. But so that's like, because most of my books have been very secular, and all of this mindfulness stuff has come from Buddhism. So I want to kind of present Buddhism in a way that's secular, but also staying true to the message.
But we need to wrap up because we're running out of time. But I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you think the apps, do they add value? What are your thoughts on the apps and, make mindfulness?
Yeah, well, I use Insight Timer all the time because I just grew up with that one. But that's for me. That's just because it has bell sounds and because it keeps track of my sittings. I haven't missed a sitting. I forget how many days, but it knows. Um, you know, you can't say they're bad because they're bringing people to the practice, and especially in the beginning, like if you can't just sit with yourself, that's hard. That's a really hard discipline to just show up and sit with yourself without anything. But to have apps that are guiding you and keeping you coming and keeping track of your progress, giving you rewards, little stars. Okay, you did a week without missing. I think it's good. I think and think of it like a raft that's getting you across a river. It's good. At some point, you're going to have to let it go, but I think to get the mass amount of people or the most amount of people doing this practice is good. I think I'd rather have people doing the practice with apps than people mindlessly not doing anything. You know, but then it becomes, it's like you can't have Deepak Chopra follow you around talking in your ear all day. So you eventually have to make that jump, or at least part partial jump to being on your own. And how can I bring myself to be at ease without somebody talking to me, without music? You just don't want to get too stuck on it. I don't see it as a problem, especially if that's what keeps you showing up.
Wonderful. How can our listeners at Resilience Agenda Radio learn more about you and your work and follow what you're up to?
Well, if you Google my name, there's pretty much a million different things. So you can use author Mark Van Buren to find me anywhere. That's my Instagram. I'm very big on Instagram. I post a lot of quotes. I'm a musician, so I post a lot of music stuff and events I'm doing. Um, you can go to my website, authormarkvanburen.com. And I do free classes every Monday. It's Eastern Standard Time, so 5:30 Eastern Standard Time on my Facebook, which again, facebook.com/, you guessed it, author Mark Van Buren. And I actually record them so that they get posted. So even if you can't make Mondays 5:30 live, you can just go back to viewing any of them. I also teach at my local library Tuesdays, the last Tuesday of every month, but I also open that up to Zoom. So if you want the Zoom link, send me an email, authormarkvanburen@gmail.com, and I'll send you the link. All this stuff is free, you know, but, just connect with me on Instagram. You could join my mailing list by going to my website. You can reach out to me personally with my email. I'm happy to help, and if I can offer something to somebody, I would hope that they would reach out so I could do that.
That's fantastic. Mark, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the chat, and we look forward to having you on again and keeping you a part of the Resilience Agenda family.
Yes, anytime. Feel free. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Resilience Agenda Radio, the mental fitness podcast with me, Hadley Fisher. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to subscribe on your favourite podcasting platform so you'll never miss an update. If you'd like to know more about Resilience Agenda or mental fitness, jump on over to www.resilienceagenda.com. There, you can learn more about our other guests and pick up the show notes from today's episode. You'll learn more about our story, the Mental Fitness Toolkit, and discover our best-selling mental fitness diaries, jam-packed with dozens of strategies and ideas for how you can improve your mental fitness each and every day of the year. Over 25,000 people every year use our diaries to plan time for their own mental fitness, or as unique and meaningful gifts for family, friends, and colleagues. That's it for today. We look forward to you joining us next time.